You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and today I'm going to be previewing the 49ers offense versus the Falcons defense, and I'm going to be doing it with a special guest. Today on the pod, I am joined by Chris Johnson, fan of the 49ers, fan of 49K Pod, but also a great guest on the pod. He is now a second time on the channel, and very happy to have him. He really knows his stuff. So, Chris, how you doing today?
I'm good. I appreciate it, Steph. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. Well, we'll start off with some 49ers news before we get into the previews here. There's quite a lot of injury updates from the 49ers end. Robbie Gould, it seems like he's going to be good to go for Sunday. I know there was a bit of a scare after, last week's game, who wasn't able to finish that one. And also the 49ers had signed a kicker earlier this week. So his availability was in question, but he'll be good to go. Ty Davis-Price, who hasn't played since week 2, he has no injury designation for this game, which means that he should be active on Sunday. And Aaron Banks and Samson Ebukam, they were dealing with some tendonitis, some soreness due to the turf last week. So they missed practice earlier this week, but they were back at practice Thursday. Ebukam doesn't even carry an injury designation for this game, so he's good to go. Banks is listed as questionable. I would assume he goes and he'll be good, but you just never know. Questionable is questionable. Nick Bosa, that's the big one for this week. He was limited Friday and he is questionable for Sunday, but it does sound like the team will kind of err on the side of caution with him this week and probably keep him out, just like based on some of the comments that Kyle Shanahan said this week. And I think the consensus from most 49er fans is that, yes, he should definitely not play in this game. Curious to know your thoughts on this one, on Bosa.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that with the turf and just simply that, it's one of those situations where, to your point, like, whether you're carrying a injury designation or being questionable and such, like, it's always kind of funny with Kyle Shanahan. Sometimes I feel as though he's transparent. Sometimes I think he's not. But at any rate, like, personally, I think that if we can't beat the Falcons without Nick Bosa, I think we have bigger issues at hand. On the same token, though, like when we're thinking about Bosa being out, Armstead being out, Kinlaw being out, then I can understand how maybe, if I'm trying to get in the mind of, D'Amico Ryans and Kyle Shanahan, if they see that like cumulative, like compounding, effect of those players being out, okay, maybe we should have Nick Bosa come back. But on the same token, the replacements for Armstead and Kinlaw have been playing very well. And I think that there's a way that we can, put together a solid edge rush, on that side of the line. I have a feeling that Samson's going to play, Ebukam's going to play, whether it's Omenahue, whether it's Kerry Hyder, filling in a rotational way for Nick Bosa. If it was me, I would rest him. We'll probably get into it, not really because of the Kansas City Chiefs game, to be honest, but I would rest him more so because if you were to bring him back early and he gets injured and goes out and he's ruled out for the game, you're not talking about just next week. You're talking about maybe like 2 or 3 games, right? So, like, to me, my thing is, and he's had that groin/core muscle injury before since back at Ohio State. So, to me personally, I would take it easy. I would hope that he doesn't play. So, but we'll see. I have a feeling. I mean, Shanahan, if the medical staff says that he's ready to go, if you remember, I can't remember what game it was last year, but Elijah Mitchell didn't practice all week, and then he was, ruled eligible like game day, and then he had like 27 carries that day. So I think that if the medical staff clears him, then I think that Shanahan will probably play him. But I think it's best to rest on the side of caution and just like sit him out. So. but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Nick. No offense to Elijah Mitchell, but because Mitchell's great, but I would argue that Nick Bosa is a little more important than
Oh, for
Elijah
sure.
Mitchell.
Oh, for sure.
To that side of the ball, and especially to your point, the Chiefs next week. You want him ready for that game, and
Yep.
if anything, if he were to play in this game against the Falcons, which, like we said, should be an easy game if the 49ers, execute and are as good as we expect them to be. If he gets hurt in this one, we're not talking about him playing against the Chiefs. It becomes a long-term thing. So that's what we don't want. So yes, I think we're all on the same page with Nick Bosa that, we'd rather just be cautious with him
Yeah.
and rest him this week, which I think that's okay. Like I would rather have Nick Bosa ready for next week 100% healthy and lose against the Falcons than not have him available potentially against the Chiefs, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, I feel you.
that's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at. On the Falcons side of the ball, the only player that was declared out for them is their starting linebacker, Michael Walker, and we'll talk about him in a bit. Kyle Pitts and their guard, Elijah Wilkinson, they're both questionable. Look, before we do this preview here, I do got a good This Week in 49ers history. All right. Let me get my little this. I got to type it out. All right, here we go. This Week in 49ers history. All right. So, I mean, you guys know that it was some players' birthdays this week. Jerry Rice, his birthday was yesterday, October 13th. I'm wearing my Jerry Rice shirt. I get a lot of compliments on this one. This one's like a pretty dope shirt. I got it on Mercari. Shout out to Mercari for that snag. And then Steve Young, his birthday was actually this week too. It was October 11th.
I didn't see that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So both of them are October babies the same week. And just a little tidbit of news, or not news, a stat from both of those guys. Jerry Rice, he caught 85 receiving touchdowns from Steve Young in his career, and that's 50 more than he had with Joe Montana. So I thought that was pretty great. I feel like, you think about Montana, Rice, and some people think Rice and Young. What tandem between like Rice and Montana and Rice and Young, like which one to you is a little more memorable?
For me, honestly, Rice and Young, and I only say that because I saw them play in person. I'm just a little bit too young to have seen Montana and Rice play. But yeah, I saw Montana and Young. So that's more memorable to me because of that reason. But I definitely saw, Joe Cool play on TV with Rice. I remember all those highlights and all those games and like that comeback in, Giants Stadium back when Bill Belichick was the defensive coordinator for the Giants and such. So I remember that, but yeah, for me, it would be Rice and Young, but I didn't know that stat. That's a really good stat. Like you should put that out there. I bet you there's a lot of people that didn't realize that 50 TDs is that's a big difference.
It is. Yeah, for sure. The other This Week in 49ers history tidbit, I got to share my screen for this one because I got to share this tweet really quick. Shout out Random 49ers. I always shout them out on this in this segment because they have so many good tidbits of 49ers history on their Twitter account. So Random 49ers. On this day, so October 14th, 2002, 20 years ago. Can you believe this was 20 years ago? Terrell Owens, he pulled out a Sharpie for his touchdown celebration. And I didn't even know this. He gave the ball to his financial advisor, Sean Springs, who also represented the guy that Owens beat on the play, which is hilarious. This is iconic. I mean, there's a lot of things that Terrell Owens did in his time with the Niners that was iconic. You think about, running onto the Cowboys star. It's also memorable. But like the pom-poms, like he had some timeless touchdown celebrations. And unfortunately, things like this you wouldn't be able to do in today's NFL. Oh, I'm sure he got fined for this.
But you know what? But you know what, Steph? You know what's funny? As you were talking about this throwback right here, I was thinking to myself, maybe they would, because you know how, like, I think it was maybe 2 seasons ago, they kind of like released the rules or relaxed the rules on like celebration and stuff. What's so funny is you had, Terrell, you had T.O. doing the Sharpie. You had like Joe Horn doing pulling out his cell phone after he scored a touchdown. And that was way before like, all the celebrations we have today. I think that's kind of ironic, but yeah, you don't see stuff like this anymore. I mean, these guys are one of a kind.
Yeah, the guys today need to get a little more creative, because the old timers had them beat a little bit on touchdown celebrations. Yeah, for sure. What's going on, Ty? Glad you could make it on the live today. And all right, let's just jump right into our preview now at this point. We're previewing the 49ers, the 49ers offense. I don't know why I put defense. That's from yesterday's episode. 49ers offense against Falcons defense. Let's start with George Kittle, because I feel like the last couple of weeks he's been a topic of discussion, right? The fact that he hasn't been very involved. To me, it felt like the 49ers did make a concerted effort to get him going early in that game against the Panthers last week. And I really felt like that was mostly influenced from, all the questions that Kyle Shanahan got and Jimmy got about Kittle's lack of involvement. It became a thing, like, and it had been going on for a few weeks, but I think the fact that once the media started asking questions, it was like, oh crap, like, yeah, we really should get him the ball. So I saw that last week, and although it wasn't a huge performance from Kittle, I think he had like 60 or some yards and no touchdown, obviously. But I think it's coming for him, like I feel like this could be a game where we see it. Oh,
is that me or is that you?
Oh, I think. Is that me? No, I think that's you.
Let me see. Sorry, I got ESPN up. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good.
There you go.
Good.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
You're good. I was just like tripping, like, am I hearing things?
live recording right there. My bad, lady. But go ahead. Sorry.
Gotta love it. No, but like, I feel like that performance was something that the 49ers can build on with Kittle, right? It just kind of, it reminded them that he's there in a way, and it reminded Jimmy Garoppolo that George Kittle is there, and that he can still carry an entire defense on his back and get a few extra yards while doing it. Like Ty says, we just want Kittle to get the ball. What do you think about, this game and the Falcons linebackers? I know they have Rashad Evans. They won't have Michael Walker for this one. So do you feel like this matchup is a good one to get Kittle going?
Oh, I think it's a great one to get Kittle going, and we'll probably get more into when we get to the position by position like breakdowns. But first, I think that something that people need to keep in mind, right, is that Kittle was injured, right? So they probably need to get him going a little bit, game shape, just get into the flow of things and so on and so forth. You spoke about it on previous pods, articles have been written about it. It's not so much the fact that, he wasn't being sent out in pass routes and stuff like that. Actually the numbers show that he was running routes on a lot of plays and such, but whether it's a matter of separation, whether it's a matter of whatever the play call was or the progression or the pass, whatever. So I think that, to your point, I know you said this before too, Steph, that Kittle is going to get going, right? And I think it's a matter of also, to your point as well, I think that you said a second ago about some of the noise, where the targets, the press corps was talking about, like, How come Kittle hasn't been seeing the ball some more, and where's his targets in the red zone, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a good. I hate to even call it and be cliche a get right game for Kittle, but we know that there's always that game or two a year where Kittle just explodes, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is a good opportunity. I mean, the linebackers for the Falcons aren't too good in pass coverage. We've got some stats to back that up, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think that this is an opportunity for Shanahan to put those guys in the blender, to be honest, and exploit them a little bit as it relates to their coverage. So, yeah, I think this is a good opportunity. We'll talk more about that for sure.
Yeah, and I guess we can talk about the fact that Michael Walker is not going to play in this game. I would say that's a pretty big deal for this Falcons defense, mostly because the guy who's going to play in his place is Troy Anderson, rookie linebacker. So I don't know much about Troy Anderson. I don't know if you do, Chris, but what can you say about Rashad Evans? Because he's going to be in this game still. So,
I'll tell you this. So, what I'll tell you this is none of the Falcons linebackers are very good in coverage. And notably, Michael Walker, he wasn't either. I know he's not going to be in the game, but he has like a 91% completion percentage against him. And that's off of 29 completions, and on average, they're 8 yards of completion. So that's almost a first down every time someone catches the ball, in which he is the main defender that should be defending that pass. So as for Rashad Evans, a little bit better, 78% completion percentage. That's only on 11 completions, so it's a smaller sample size, but he's given about 9 yards per completion. So, I think that there are opportunities, right? And then with the ability that Kittle has with yards after catch, I mean, shoot, if you're giving up, I mean, the statistics say 9 yards, but even if it's a 7-yard pass, 6-yard pass, we already know that Kittle can make that a 15, 20-yard gain right there. So I think that this is an opportunity for Shanahan to really scheme some stuff up, but then also even with the running backs coming out of the backfield. So, yeah. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of success thus far with Debo being in the backfield as a runner, but coming out of the backfield as a pass catcher, I mean, that's a mismatch all day. I mean, Kittle's a mismatch all day also, obviously, right?
Right.
So the other aspect of it is, too, I mean, they're going to probably in the nickel, in nickel, they're probably going to have a slot, corner out there on Kittle or Juwan Jennings or whoever happens to be out there. But if we, on early downs, if they're in base and they're 3-4, and then maybe motion someone out into the slot to where a linebacker has to pick them up, I mean, the Falcons have given up the 5th most yards out of the slot defensively all year thus far. So those guys, I mean, and I'm sure that we know these things. I mean, the team and the squad's got to know those things too, right? So exactly. I think this is an opportunity to really to get after them and really, really exploit their the middle of their defense.
Yeah, the one strength that I saw with Michael Walker, and again, he's not going to play in this game, was that he had a very low missed tackle rate, only 10.2 missed tackles.
Yeah.
And he was good in run defense, 35 tackles, 11 stops on the season. He also had an interception in week 2. Now, Troy Anderson, who's going to be playing in his place, hasn't forced an incompletion yet. He had 3 missed tackles last week against the Bucs. And he had 3 stops, which I guess is, that's a positive for the Falcons, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you can exploit a rookie. And I definitely feel like, I was joking with Jay yesterday on the defense preview that, you can imagine that Kyle Shanahan is looking at his microscope right now. He probably has Troy Anderson in his microscope right now for a matchup that he's going to be able to exploit this week. So yeah, I definitely hope that George Kittle has a breakout game. I think this is definitely the time to do it and get him going. What's going on, Callie? Glad you could join. Let's move on to the 49ers wide receivers and how they'll match up against this Falcons outside corners. Well, let's start with Debo. Debo, he only had 2 carries in each of the last 2 games, and that is after having a ton of carries in the first 3. In week 1, he had 8 carries. Week 2, 4. Week 3, he had 5 carries. So again, it seems like, his carries, the amount of times that he's running the ball these last 2 weeks has decreased, but he's getting the ball still as a receiver. He only had 20 yards on 2 catches last week, but he also had a touchdown, and he leads all receivers in yards after the catch per reception, as you can imagine. I mean, that's his greatest asset, right? The yards after the catch. So he leads all receivers with 10.6 yards after reception average. And Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, I think, is a interesting topic because I feel like he's coming off his best game of the season. And I know the stats on paper weren't like crazy or anything. He had 3 catches on 4 targets, 58 yards. But he's also an incredible blocker, which I don't think he gets quite enough credit for. It feels like he's on the cusp of something, of a breakout game. I don't know if you get the same sense, but I kind of feel the same for Ayuk as we've been talking about Kittle, and the media was talking about Kittle. And then last week, like I said, the 49ers offense made it a point to, get him more targets. I feel like Ayuk is kind of on that same trajectory where, it's obvious he's not getting quite as many opportunities as he should be, given how talented he is. And, Jimmy Garoppolo this week even had some questions about Brandon Ayuk's targets, to which he basically said, it's coming. And then Shanahan also gave Ayuk a ton of praise after the Panthers game. So I feel like a breakout is coming, but I think that's all. It has to be relative to these Falcons corners, right?
Sure.
So do these Falcons corners present an opportunity for a Brandon Ayuk breakout game? I know they have the very talented AJ Terrell, former first-round pick, and they also have Casey Hayward. So what can you say about those guys? And can we see an Ayuk breakout game?
Yeah, we'll see. So I actually, I think it's okay to, have love for some players around the league and stuff. I don't got any love. I don't have love for any other teams, but I do like AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward and such. I think that many of us remember that that Debo tattooed AJ Terrell last year. Was it when he knocked out his mouthpiece? That was something.
I forgot that was
crazy.
him.
Oh yeah, he ran through his face. But the reality is, as far as like completion percentage and stuff, neither one of them are having they're okay, right? They're middle of the road, right? So AJ Terrell's giving up about 60% pass, completion percentage. Casey's at about 57%, but they're both on average giving up 12 yards a pass, right? So the completions are caught on them. So I think that I hate to be this guy, I'm saying I know a lot of some experts think that the all 22 is the worst thing to be out there for fans to see and such, because we don't know what the play call is. We don't know what the plan is and the scheme and so on and so forth. But I think that I am of the belief that Brandon Ayuk is open a lot. You know what I mean? I think that he oftentimes has defenders out there guarding there. You know what I mean? We saw him cooking people all playoffs last year, even against some of the best defenses in the league. So that being said, I think that he'll have his opportunities this game. I think he will. And there's opportunities there's ways that Shanahan gets Ayuk involved in the game plan. Just moving with the ball in his hands on sweeps and jets and stuff like that. So underneath routes and slants as well. So I think that there'll be opportunity, especially with the window dressing that Shanahan brings. I just hope he does. I mean, there are times in which you would think that, some of the pre-snap motion that Shanahan is accustomed to is absent. I think that I felt that way the last time we played the Falcons a little bit. I know it's a very similar offense because I think their offensive coordinator, was under Michael LaFleur, one of the LaFleurs in Tennessee. He served underneath him. So it's a similar offensive scheme. So I think sometimes Shanahan overthinks things. He's like, well, they're going to think I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do something opposite or whatever the case, as opposed to just doing what we're good at.
Yeah.
So I think with stretching the field, getting that pre-snap motion, the ability for Ayuk to really be an elite route runner, yeah, I think he'll have a good game this game for sure.
Yeah, and AJ Terrell actually, he drew Mike Evans last week, right? So Evans last week had 4 catches, 81 yards, and he didn't have a touchdown though, which is a huge part of Evans' game. Like most often he's gonna have a touchdown, but I guess that's one positive for Terrell that he didn't allow a touchdown on Evans, but he also nearly had an interception on Brady. But one thing I did notice is that he's missing a lot of tackles this year, so I don't know if that could be a thing too. I mean, Deebo Samuel, he makes guys miss tackles already, so if a guy is already missing tackles, in previous games, that could be a factor in this game. There's 3 different games this season where AJ Terrell has missed 2 tackles, including last week against the Bucs. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But we got a great question here in the comments. Callie here says, who's a better blocker at wide receiver, Ayuk or Jennings?
So I got a thought about this. I think naturally, I think Jennings, bigger body, more physical by nature. I think the Ayuk has developed into being a better blocker. I know a little bit about Juwan Jennings. I went to University of Florida, so I'm a diehard Gator and stuff. Juwan Jennings went to Tennessee, so I remember seeing him every year in the SEC East, and he's always been physical, right? I think that was part of, whatever you want to call it, the doghouse, him being shunned or whatever early in the year last year as it relates to Ayuk. Because he was playing, he was running free, he was open a lot, but for whatever reason, he wasn't getting the ball. I think some of the physicality and being, a better blocker, I think was part of what he needed to develop in his game. So I think Jennings is more of a natural blocker. I think Ayuk has developed into being a better blocker. What do you think, Steph?
I think that's a great point. I feel like they're very like neck and neck, and it just speaks to the 49ers and the emphasis they put on blocking for their receivers, right? Like you have to be a good blocker. And like you said, Ayuk has improved a lot. I'm going to say Ayuk though, just because he pisses guys off.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like you gotta be good to piss the guy you're blocking off, and he's done that more than once.
That's
true.
Jennings too. I remember I went to the Jags game last year, and he got that guy ejected early in the game. Yeah, but I agree with you. Ayuk for sure. We'll get into people's heads for sure.
Yeah, Paul here says love JJ, but Ayuk plays angry. Yeah,
probably because he's not getting the ball as much as he wants. I'd be mad.
He takes the frustration out on his blocks. If that's his motivation, hey, maybe withhold some targets.
As long as he's channeling it the right way, you know what I'm saying? Not being an issue in the locker room. I'm all about it.
Yeah, definitely. And Milano had this comment talking about, what you said, that sometimes Kyle overthinks things. He says Kyle is basically the Vizzini of play callers, overthinks things too much sometimes. I definitely agree with that. Like, he almost like outsmarts himself. Yeah. Like he tries to think too many steps ahead almost.
Yes.
And this
I agree
with you.
Is, and we can, I'm sorry to cut you off, Steph. We can, I can share this. We probably should share it after we do the position by position breakdown and stuff. But I think that this game, I really don't want Kyle to get too much into his head, right? Because of the bigger picture, right? Because of the schedule we have in front of us before the bye and so on and so forth. Like, I although I like, analytics and such, I think feel's a real thing too, right? You hear a lot about that in baseball, for instance. But like as it relates to football, there have been times, right, where, defense is playing well. Maybe we're in the red zone. Maybe we're within the 10-yard line or something like that. fourth down, instead of just going for it, and even if we don't get it, making the other team go like 95 yards to have to score or whatever, Kyle's like, nah, I'll take the points. Even if we're up already, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think sometimes he gets too wrapped up in those things. But that I just hope that he always says there's a collective approach to play calling, right? And I just hope that sometimes some of those other coaches feel empowered enough to be like, Kyle, let's go for it. Because we saw in Dallas last year when Debo was like, Kyle, give me the ball, let's do this. He was like, all right, shoot, let's go, and he scored a touchdown, right?
Yeah,
sometimes it's on feel. You know what I mean? I want Kyle to feel it some more.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely feel that, and I think it's interesting also, like, not to get derailed here, but like I think it's interesting that most of his best plays happen in where he scripts the game, right? The first 25 or so plays, like that's always like the best part of the game for the offense, and then after that, like it kind of and I think I think it goes to that feel thing, like during the game he doesn't have a feel for certain things, so I don't know, but
I agree.
Hopefully that's something that improves over time
sure.
with his play calling for sure. But at the end of the day, it also comes with execution, right?
Without a doubt.
These last few games, the 49ers offense has been pretty good. I would say also on third down, especially, which like is a great segue to Juwan Jennings, right? I mean, we talked about his blocking, but him as a receiver, he is the team's lifeline on third down. You think about that one show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and they'd have to call. They got one person they can call, like the lifeline. Juwan Jennings is the 49ers offense lifeline, like on third down. 7 of his 10 catches this season have gone for first downs. Like that's crazy. That's crazy. I know. Yeah. Right. Like, cause he's been doing this. This has been his role. And that's the crazy thing about it is like teams by now, opposing defenses, this is on tape. Like Juwan Jennings, third down is going to Jennings. Like look for him. And he still finds ways to get open, and credit to Kyle Shanahan too, cause he can scheme guys open. But I think, Juwan Jennings, he's been really impressive, and all he does is convert, And speaking of third downs, there was a great tweet from Jordan Elliott earlier. If you guys don't follow him on Twitter, go ahead and do that at @splash_cousin. He tweeted this earlier. So the 49ers offense has converted 50% of their third down attempts over the last 2 weeks, which is huge because if you think about if you look at that game against the Broncos, they were abysmal on third down. I mean, all around they were abysmal on offense, right? But you can point specifically to those third downs not being able to sustain drives as one of the main reasons, drive killers pretty much. So the other part of his tweet, Jordan's tweet, he said, the 49ers offense will look to continue their recent hot streak on third down against a Falcons defense that is ranked 27th in the league in third down conversion rate at 47.1.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think that's huge, right? And so we can probably expect another big game from Juwan Jennings and maybe even some other guys. I know we'll talk about Tevin Coleman, but Coleman was also a huge contributor on third downs, last week as well, made some big plays. And so, if a defense is not able to get off the field on third down, 49ers offense probably licking his chops a little bit, looking at that. But going back to Juwan Jennings, the Falcons slot corner is a rookie, right? They got D. Alford there. I mean, I don't know too much about Alford. I know there was a lot of pressure on him last week going up against Tom Brady. What do you see out of Alford?
Yeah, PFF has the guy rated high. And I know PFF is PFF, and some people live by it, some people don't. But they have him ranked 19th out of 104 cornerbacks. He gives up about a 65% completion percentage, only on 11 completions, so not a huge sample size, but he is giving up about 12 yards of completion. But like I said earlier, the Falcons collectively as a unit on their defense is giving up the 5th most completion yards out of the slot. So while he as an individual is, I'm not sure what some of those alignments look like. I'm not sure if, he was always in the slot or if they're, it's spread or what. I'm not sure how that looked, generally speaking. But overall, the Falcons aren't good out of the slot. But he's rated high by PFF, but I think there might be some opportunities there, I'm saying, as a rookie and such. And I just, what kills me, speaking about the slot and the success or challenges that people have in the slot, defensively, I feel like the slot corner is something that we can never stop that. I want us to run that sometime on some other team. Like, I want us to do the slot corner on the defense. You know what I mean? So to see if we can have the similar success because of alignment and everything. But yeah, I think that it'll be a solid matchup. But when you're talking about putting Juwan Jennings in the slot, Kittle in the slot, goodness,
yep.
I mean,
exactly. It's not just point. It'll be mostly Jennings, but it won't just be Jennings. Like Ayuk will line up in the slot. Debo, Kyle Shanahan likes to move everyone around everywhere. So I'm sure there's an opportunity for a mismatch there at some point. So yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But as we know, the 49ers offense is mostly, run heavy. They've been passing a lot lately as well. They've had a pretty good balance, but still this run game has been pretty solid considering the fact, we were a little worried a few weeks ago, right? When Elijah Mitchell went down and then, Ty Davis Price and then just a lot of injuries at running back. And Jeff Wilson Jr., it seems like he's just gotten better every week. And his best game of the season was last week as well. I know the season has been short so far, but 18 carries, 120 yards. That's an average of 7.1 yards per carry. He also had a touchdown, and he had 4 runs of 10 or more yards, which, is great, right? Jeff Wilson Jr. was responsible for 6 first downs just himself alone last week. And he's seen 8 man in the box 25.68% of the time. So for him to be doing what he's doing with that, seeing so many 8-man boxes is even more impressive. And he ranks 6th in total rush yards over expected per Next Gen Stats. And I know Ty Davis Price, he should be active for this game, right? He's healthy now. But I gotta wonder, do we even see Ty Davis Price much? Tevin Coleman had a great game last week too. It wasn't he wasn't huge on the ground. 8 carries, 23 yards. That's a 2.9 average. But he also had a rushing touchdown. Like I said, his bigger contributions were on third down, and he had 3 receptions for 44 yards. Those were big moments in the game. He made some great grabs, and he also had the 1 receiving touchdown. So,
for sure.
I don't know. And also this is a revenge game for Tevin Coleman. You got to remember that aspect.
Yeah, you're right.
So I don't think they're gonna
and among others,
Coleman. Yeah, this is a huge revenge game all around, right? But Coleman definitely one of those guys. And after the week he had last week, it's a revenge game. I don't think you can, have Ty Davis Price ahead of Tevin Coleman.
I'm with you. So I think that to your point, I think it's good to give TDP some run, you know what I'm saying, just to get some experience, whatever the case may be. Maybe
get him back in game shape.
Right. Maybe he has, 5 carries throughout the entire game or something of that nature or whatever. I think Tevin Coleman's going to be actually, Steph, I could see a circumstance in which maybe Coleman is the premier, third down back for sure, as well as having some other, some other work in there. And then maybe TDP is just a little bit underneath that or whatever, right? But I agree with you. I mean, to your point, you said last game he had like four carries of over 10 yards. Jeff Wilson Jr. also has the last 3 games, he's had rushes over 30 yards each game, right? He's the only person in the NFL that's had those numbers. So I think this is going to be an opportunity for chunk plays, both through the air and on the ground. But something I wanted to mention that I think is very interesting that people aren't really talking about, and this relates to not only rushing but passing, and we can talk about that in a minute when we get to passing. But from a rushing perspective, right, the Falcons defense is ranked 17th, giving up about 115 yards per game, right? So you know how there's that saying that, you know, defense travels and so on and so forth. Well, for the Falcons, defense really does travel because, like, at away, they're 3rd in the league, giving up 82 yards per game. But at home, they're 29th in the league, giving up 164 yards per game. So for whatever reason, at home, they are not as strong against the run as they are on the road. Now, some people may be curious about some context with that, right? They played 5 games this year. They've played at home against the Saints and Browns, and they've been on the road against the Rams, Seahawks, and Bucks. So against the Rams, Seahawks, and Bucks, they've held them on average to 82 yards on the ground. And then at home, the Saints and Browns, they've gouged them for 164. And I'd argue to say that we have a better running game than the Saints and Browns. So that's just something to keep in mind. You know what I mean?
I mean, the Browns actually have a great running game with Nick Chubb and all that.
Yep,
but
Chubb,
but I agree though. The 49ers run game is up there with the best of them for sure. So yeah, I definitely think that Kyle Shanahan's going to want to pound the ball in this one as he does in most games. And it's been great that, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo's been efficient because there's a balance there. And I think it helps everything else. So let's talk about the 49ers offensive line because I think everything goes through them, right? I mean, how good Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of predicated on how good the 49ers offensive line is, as well as, you know, the run game. So I'm just going to go right into it. The biggest concern in this game and in the matchup for this offensive line is Grady Jarrett.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, he was an issue in 2019 too. I mean, he was wrecking shop, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I agree.
And in the interior of the 49ers offensive line, it's okay. Like, they're serviceable, but you also know that, you know, when they're going up against someone as good as Grady Jarrett, you kind of cringe a little bit because you're like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Especially Jake Brendel. He's been pretty mediocre at center.
I would agree.
And again, it's serviceable, right? And you think about the offensive line as a unit. They've been fine. You know, Jimmy Garoppolo has been able to get the ball out, you know, things like that. But still, I mean, you got to think about that, and that's my concern. So Jake Brendel in this game going up against Jarrett, as well as, you know, Banks. He gave up 2 pressures and 2 hurries in Carolina. Banks did. And also, he's questionable going into this game. I expect that he will play. But again, I'm just worried. So I don't know. What can you say about Grady Jarrett? What's going to be the challenge for them going up against him?
Well, the dude has like 20 pressures as an interior pass rusher, right? I think he is. Yeah, right, exactly. He is he's their best pass rusher by far, I think, on the defense for the Falcons. I think that it is definitely a formidable challenge for the offensive line, nothing to be overlooked. I mean, he may not have the name recognition as like Aaron Donald, but he can still wreck shop and he can take games over. I mean, he was the one that, if I'm not mistaken, it was Grady Jarrett that got called for that terrible roughing the passer against
Yeah.
the Bucks.
So he's pissed off.
Yeah. So I mean, the guy, like, he's a player. He's a dude. You know what I'm saying? So, in my opinion, I mean, there are ways in which to scheme. I mean, you can scheme anything, right? But I think there are ways in which, whether it's a matter of expanding the pocket, moving the pocket, Jimmy is known for his quick release and so on. If we are able to, utilize some of those, aspects and more, we can maybe minimize some of the ability that he has to effectuate the game. I'm not sure how good he is as a run stopper. I did not find information on that. I'm not sure if you know about that stuff, but I do think that Grady Jarrett is he's their sack leader. I do think that Jarrett is probably and those offensive meetings are definitely talking about him. His name is coming up a lot. You know what I'm saying? And when we were doing scout defense this week, I'm sure that they were like, having him being one of those players that they were having someone play his role. You know what I'm saying? So I think that fortunately there aren't multiple people to attract attention on the defensive line, in my opinion. They're edge rushers. Grady Jarrett does play edge when they're in the nickel, but by and large, the other edge isn't as much of a threat, based on,
Right.
The statistics and so on and so forth. So he's the one that's going to demand attention. But I don't like the way that we don't consistently pick up stunts. So if Jarrett is, getting involved, if their defensive coordinator is getting involved in, making things confusing for the offensive line and such, Aaron Banks, I know you've said this before too, Steph, that he's been, I'll be honest, I'll take the L on it. I didn't think Aaron Banks was good at all. You know what I'm saying? Not having seen him play last year and high draft pick or whatever. He's been fine. He's been fine.
Yeah.
Brendo's been a little bit challenging, right? So he's been challenged. So if they're doing stunts, if they're making some, giving some confusing looks up front, that is where things are getting kind of problematic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've definitely shown some inconsistencies, right, with handling those. So, I mean, if I'm Atlanta's defensive coordinator, I'm trying to get some stunts out there and get
for sure.
Grady Jarrett on some mismatches. You talked about, the fact that he does line up on the edge on nickel downs. And you did mention that the other edge is not as good. Are you talking about Ogundeji?
Yeah, I can't pronounce the brother's name, but yeah, that's he's questionable too. And he's questionable.
Yes.
So honestly, whenever I see questionable, I'm not sure about you, but when I see questionable on an injury report, I'm like, that guy's playing. But anyway,
more than likely.
I think he's gonna play. So he's the other edge that they have in nickel.
So and I wrote this in my notes that I liked that matchup for McGlinchey because as you said, he doesn't really pose much of a threat. I think McGlinchey's been playing well, these past few weeks. The one worry, of course, is Jalen Moore, right? Because third string left tackle. Last week on 36 pass blocking snaps, he gave up 3 pressures, a hurry, a quarterback hit, and a sack. By all accounts, I actually thought it was going to be way worse for Jalen Moore. All things considered, I thought he did okay.
That's fair.
The stats on PFF, I think, make it seem a lot worse than me watching the game. What my takeaways from his performance were not as bad, but still, the one positive, PFF did give Moore a good run blocking grade, 75.3. Yeah. But again, the fact if Jarrett is gonna be on the edge on nickel downs, I would be a little afraid for Jalen Moore. And Moore coming off a game with Brian Burns, who is also, very talented pass rusher. I just, noted those stats, 3 pressures, the sack, and all that. It could have been worse. But again, I think the 49ers are going to need to give him some help on that side. I think that much is clear.
I agree. And, obviously depending on the play call and such, whether it's juice, whether it's a Kittle maybe, or even putting someone in motion to go on that side of the play or whatever. I saw a pod earlier this week by Joe Staley talking about, how the team has been looking and such. He made some comments that I agreed with, in the sense that, in the passing game, for instance, last week we picked up, I think, 7 first downs. All of them were through the pass. All of them were in shotgun, and they were in empty sets, right? I get kind of concerned in that circumstance, right? Because in those obvious passing downs, when you have an empty backfield and such, you're throwing the ball, right? You're kind of putting, Jalen Moore on an island, right? So, it's in those circumstances that I think that obviously, the ball needs to come out quick, or you roll the other way. You roll to the other side of protection or something like that, right? Obviously. But so I agree with you. I think that it's interesting you say that. I didn't think about it until you just mentioned it. I should give Jalen Moore a little bit more credit, probably. I think he was I think when, for instance, in the Packers game in the playoffs last year, when Trent Williams had the high ankle sprain and went down, Jalen Moore stepped in. He wasn't like terrible. He gave up some stuff, but he wasn't terrible. And you were right. His numbers haven't been like the worst. I agree. He is probably a little stronger than I give him credit for personally. I just wish I thought he would be more. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I definitely think we're gonna have to shore that up. Whether it's chipping him, whether it's, again, going coverage away from him, expand the pocket, we got to be creative for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So that's my biggest concern, right? Just Jarrett for the most part. I think aside from that, this Falcons defensive line is not, too scary. You can say that, Taquan Graham is maybe one also pretty good, but, there really isn't anything besides Jarrett that, scares me. So, hopefully the 49ers put an emphasis on that. I mean, do you have any other concerns for this offensive line, looking at what the Falcons bring on their defensive line?
Not really. Not only health.
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone else getting injured. You know what I'm saying? But
I mean, that's a big thing. Just come out of this game healthy, right?
Yeah, no, for real, for sure.
But let's go ahead and talk about the man of the hour. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm curious. I'm curious to know your thoughts on how he's been playing, Chris, because to me, he looks pretty good these last few weeks. He's been efficient. He looks healthy. He looks healthy. And I say that because to me, throughout his career, we've been watching him for a few years now. He plays so different when he's healthy. Like, you can just tell. He hangs in the pocket. He makes better decisions, mostly because he's in the pocket and he has time to make those decisions, right? He's not like panicking. But it's like a trickle-down effect to everything that he does. So I think he's been pretty solid. What have you seen from Jimmy Garoppolo these last few weeks?
All right, so I got a lot to say about that. So hopefully I'm not going to try to take too much time, but I agree with you. First and foremost, I agree with you. I think that Jimmy I don't think he ever has an issue with confidence. I think he has an issue with feel. And I think he has an issue with, rhythm of the game, if that makes sense. If Jimmy's out of sync, like, it's not so much because he doesn't believe he can make the pass or is second guessing himself. He's just not in a rhythm. I think that I do agree with you. I mean, I know every quarterback has turnover-worthy plays every game. I'm fully aware of that, right? But like last game, he had some passes that were a little dicey that I thought maybe could have gone back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But
I saw like 2 of those.
Yeah, that's the Jimmy Garoppolo experience, right? So I think that I do believe that he has played better. I think that he also has gained confidence as the game has gone on. I think in the however many years, 5 or 6 years he's been in San Francisco, Santa Clara, whatever. I think that he also gains confidence as the game goes on when the defense is playing well as well. Yeah. I personally believe that this is a game in which that the offense needs to carry their own water a little bit. I think that in both the last game against Carolina and the game before that. We played the Rams, right? The Rams. There have been some pivotal points in that game in which the defense had a big play. In Carolina, it was the pick six by Emmanuel Sanders. I'm sorry, not Emmanuel Sanders. Excuse me, Emmanuel Mosley. And then and with the Rams game with Tano Hufanga. So those are some critical points in the game, right? That like had the opposing team's defense kind of like gotten something on the offense, gotten something going, and maybe scored. It may have put us on our heels a little bit, right? So it made us to be made Jimmy a little bit more comfortable. One thing that I did see was that I think Jimmy's his passing percentage is great, in the short, intermediate screen game. It's dropping a little bit when he's trying to throw further downfield. However, I think Jimmy had like four throws over 10 yards last game or something like that. That was more than like the game before that. So he is stretching the field some. He is playing a lot better under pressure, which is awesome. Notably that pass that he threw up to who was it? Tevin Coleman when he came down with it. Those are the yeah, exactly, that dime that he threw. And what's so important that Shaq is talking about, what's so important about those plays is under normal circumstances, Jimmy eats that sack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Put that ball up, you know what I'm saying? Either put it somewhere where the receiver can't get it and you're just throwing it away or whatever, or go pass interference hunting. You know what I mean? There are a lot of times in which we don't do those things. Even when the play isn't there, a lot of quarterbacks, some quarterbacks will just throw it at the feet or throw the ball away. It kills me sometimes when I just do not see Jimmy just throw the ball away, right? I'm seeing less of that stuff now. I'm seeing Jimmy putting the ball up. I'm seeing Jimmy, making better decisions with it and such. I don't mean to give him all this love and then end it on a negative note, but I will say that, Jimmy's not gone 3 games without throwing an interception in his career, right? So he's gone the last 2 games without throwing a pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and hopefully, that's got to stop at some point, right? And hopefully it stops now. Hopefully he'll complete this game with a clean sheet as it relates to interceptions. So, and this, I think he has opportunity to do so. He just has to make some good decisions with the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to bring that up, like the fact that he hasn't gone more than the 2 games in a season without, throwing an interception.
Or consecutive. Sorry, my bad. I meant to say consecutive games. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This game would be number 3. So can he do it? That's a big question. And you brought up the fact that, like he's played great, but you mentioned there were a couple passes that could have gone the other way. It really was just, it wasn't because Jimmy made a good pass. It was because the defense didn't catch the ball, that it could have easily been an interception.
Can I interrupt you real quick, Steph?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I say something real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
To that point, the reason why I say that, the reason why I don't think that Jimmy lacks confidence is because how many times do we see Jimmy throw into double, triple, literally sometimes quadruple coverage? Like, it's not a confidence thing, right?
No.
Like, I think it's a feel out of structure. Jimmy doesn't do well with that. You know what I'm saying? And it's moments like that where I think that, like I said, he just has to make better decisions with the ball. So if the play isn't there, the play isn't there. Like, throw it at a player's feet, throw it away, whatever. Like, I would rather you take a intentional grounding than throw it into triple coverage. It get batted up and just gets intercepted. You know what I'm saying? So I'm seeing a little less of that. Jimmy is still doing some of that. Jimmy's going to be Jimmy because, again, I think he does have the confidence to where he's like, I can make this pass, whatever. Let me be a hero. But on the same token, it's also coming with him pushing the ball downfield a little bit more, which is interesting. So I think this is a defense he can do it with, though.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. I mean, we know that, right? And his to the point of turnover worthy plays, right? His turnover-worthy play rate this season is 2.4, which is among his, I think that's the lowest he's ever had it.
It
And
is.
credit to Jordan for also tweeting that out.
Yeah.
And it's a small sample size. I'll say
Yeah.
that. He didn't start the season, right? So had he started the season, who knows what it would have been. And it's also, well, we're now at week 6. We've gone through 5 weeks of games. But it speaks to how good he's been lately, right? Yeah, I mean, he's taking care of the football in the sense that he's not making as many dumb decisions as we've seen him make in the past. And I just wanted to circle back to this comment here from Paul. 9 years in the league, and he might be learning to manage a game, get him a cookie, because that's the sentiment from a lot of fans, right? It's like, why should I, apologize? Because there's people who think you got to apologize to Jimmy because he's playing good right now. And this is not the end all be all, right? Like, he's going to continue to play. He's going to have another bad game. We don't, I don't agree that we should apologize, but I also don't agree that, we should just find any bad thing about him and hold it against him. Look, we know who Jimmy Garoppolo is at this point in his career. Yeah, 9 years in the league. This is who he is. This is the Jimmy Garoppolo experience. Like you said, he's good and he's bad. You get all of that with him. The thing with him is, can he now keep this, what he's doing now, can he do this consistently? And that's the big question, right? Because over time in his career, his time here in San Francisco, he's had good stretches. He's had some really good stretches, but those stretches don't last like as long as we would hope them to, right? So I think that's what it all comes down
quick,
to.
Steph? And I'm not trying to deter things real quick, but I do need to speak to that a little bit because my girl Emily, she's a big 49ers fan too. She's from California and everything. And coincidentally, right before we started dating and got engaged, she was a Niners fan. So shout out to Emily. But like something that I talked to her about a lot, right? That not a lot of people talk about. Like, I understand that comment that was just made. And Lord knows I am not a Jimmy apologist. I am not out here. Like, I was happy to move on and move up to 3 in the draft and everything.
Same.
There is, however, right, if we're being objective and we're being real about the situation and circumstance, there is a possibility that Kyle Shanahan needs to own some of what Jimmy is and what he has, quote unquote, become. And I'll explain what I mean when I say that real quick. Like, in my opinion, there haven't been any quarterbacks that have developed in Kyle Shanahan's system, right? Kyle Shanahan went after CJ Beathard when he said that literally he was the only quarterback in the draft that he wanted when literally Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson and others were in that same draft. Kyle Shanahan is the one that got Nick Mullins. Kyle Shanahan is the one that, accepted the trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, regardless of if Bill Belichick called us up or whatever. The point I'm making you is, like, I haven't seen much development or growth from Jimmy since in the time he's been in San Francisco. In addition to that, it's well known that, Kyle Shanahan loves Kirk Cousins, right? And Kirk Cousins is known for being a very regimented, structured quarterback. I'll do what you say. The ball needs to go here. I'll throw it here, whatever the case may be. And this past summer, RG3 came out with a lot of, commentary and some stuff in his book that spoke about how demanding Kyle was, and Kyle wants the ball here at this time, and so on and so forth. And that being said, I think that some of that it has gone into Jimmy's game, right? Jimmy's like, well, the ball needs to go here. It needs to go there. Like, he doesn't do stuff out of structure. I think some of that is, a result of Kyle. And as time has gone on, I feel Kyle's a little arrogant and such. And that being said, though, someone like, Trey Lance has the ability to, like, save the coach when they make a bad call or whatever the case may be. So that being said, I think that some of that may be, a result of Kyle Shanahan. Jimmy just last week made a comment like, Kyle and I are speaking the same language. Things are doing well, so on and so forth. Dude, you got here in 2017. You're saying you're speaking the same language now? You know what I'm saying? So I think that we have to think about a little more beyond just the capability of, because I get surprised, you know what I'm saying, when I see Jimmy have a ball. It may happen once every however many games, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. I understand. But when he throws downfield with like a 50, 55-yard air yard pass, whether it's complete or not, it's not the point. I never thought he even had an arm like that, right? So, like, the ability is there, I think. But I think sometimes Kyle is constraining his potentially is what's happening. But who knows? It remains to be seen. If Jimmy goes to another team and is showing more things or whatever, then we'll know. If he goes to another team and showing us the exact same stuff, then we'll know it's Jimmy and not Kyle.
Yeah. I guess we'll find out when that happens. But look, I mean, obviously, I agree with you. I'm not a Jimmy apologist, but I'm also not the kind of person who is going to root against him.
Right.
I am a fan of this team. Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of this team. I want him to do good every single game. I don't care about anything else. I want him to do good. So, to me, that's what it all comes down to. And look, this offense for this game, I don't think they're going to have the same comfort that they've had in all the other games that they've had this season, right?
That's
no
well
Mosley, probably no Bosa. And, we talk about the fact earlier in the episode that, this defense has remained good without Armstead, without, Kinlaw and, some other injuries, Jimmy Ward. But these injuries have piled up now to a point that I don't know if they'll look like quite the same defense that we've seen these last few weeks. Mosley is a huge injury, and I'm not saying guys can't step up, but there's going to be some. I think in this game, it's not going to be the same defense, okay? And so I say the defense is going to give up a score, and I think they'll give up 2 field goals in this game as well.
Okay.
So this game is going to be close.
My bad.
It's going to be close because I'm thinking, again, we're not going to have the same benefit of this defense being on 10 like the whole game, right? And it's still going to be good, okay? Just want to reiterate that. The defense is still going to be good. But it's not going to be as good as we've seen it. And this isn't a very good Falcons team, so they'll be fine. But the 49ers offense, they need to stay on their game the entire game. Here's what I think happens on offense. They're going to start off hot. I think they'll score on the first drive. I think they get a field goal probably before halftime. And I think we kind of see the offense in the second half go a little stagnant, but I think they'll score just once in the second half. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo does throw an interception. It's going to be a close one. I say my score prediction for this is 17-13. What about you, Chris?
Super.
I know.
Super low. It's tight with it. Okay.
Make you sweat a little bit. It'll make you sweat.
I'm not mad at that. No, I'm not mad at that. My thing is, I think it's going to be tight through the half, and then I think that honestly, defense puts the clamps on the Falcons offense in a way that they haven't experienced this year. When I mean the way they haven't experienced this year is this: the Falcons are scrappy as hell. They're scrappy, man, and they, they're 5-0 against the spread this year. They're the only undefeated team against the spread. I think that ends this week. We're favored, I think, 6 points. And give me a touchdown a quarter by the offense. You know what I'm saying? I think that could be done. I believe, though, it requires, and this is when you're talking about players in the game that need to, how do I say, the key players of the game, right? I like to identify key players that aren't the quarterback because that's a lazy take. But really, Jimmy has to. He can't turn the ball over. I am with you. Yeah. I do believe that. I mean, history is history, right? I do think that he's going to probably turn the ball over in some capacity this game. But the reality situation is, whether it's our special teams, which has been struggling, and had some issues flipping the field for the opposite team. I mean, there's no way in hell Carolina has 15 points, right? If it wasn't for, I think their kickoff returner had like 7 returns for like 200 yards last game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Notably giving up like
good.
a 43 and a 45-yard, right? Return. And then that second one's when Robbie Gould got hurt, right? So my thing is, I think that if offense, this is a pivotal game, and this is what I was kind of saying at the beginning of the pod, right? At the top of the pod, is that like by no means or any stretch is this like a must-win game. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, though, is this is a moment for us to beat a team that we're supposed to beat, like we did last week, right? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be a blowout? I'm not saying that. But on the same token, going into the Chiefs game next week at 4-2 is a lot different than like 3-2, right? When some people are we're probably gonna be home dogs in that game, whatever. And if that's a game that we lose and we're 3-3 going against the Rams, and then having to bye or whatever, coming out of this 4-2, it would be a hell of a lot better than going into that game 3-2. So I'm sorry, 3-3. So that being said, like I think that this is pivotal. I think it's critical for us to find a way to win. I mean, if we are a team that we believe, if we are a team going in that we thought we were this team, if we are the team that we thought this team was going into this season, then we got to win this game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And another thing is, I already mentioned about the rushing yards, but passing is the exact same. Like the Falcons defense is 29th in the league in yards per game passing at 279. Away, they would rank at 19th in the league, about 230 yards per game. At home, they give up 310 yards a game at, that'd be ranked 32nd in the league. They'd be dead last. So for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but the Falcons defense is different at home. And again, like I said, their home teams that they played were Saints and Browns. They played the Bucs on the road. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting. Now, Grant, I get it. If we want to talk about some more context, as a division game, you get up for division games different or whatever, but the numbers are the numbers. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that I'm relying on them overly, but I think this is an opportunity for the squad. I mean, we're 4-0 in these last few years that we've been, staying at the Greenbrier and West Virginia on these like 2-game East Coast swings. On the second game of the swing, we're 4-0. I think this is an opportunity for us to really, go into Atlanta and really realize, the depth and identify that. I think that the offense is going to need to carry their own water in this game in the way that they haven't thus far this year.
Exactly.
And they did in Carolina, but again, defense scored, 7 of those.
It was balanced. It was balanced that game. Yeah.
So I think that I'm not as concerned. I think the defense may bend, may break a little more than we've seen thus far. But I think that what's critical is for us to get up early. We've seen Falcons come back on teams. They're 5-0 against the spread, but we get up. But I think that I honestly have all the faith in the world in D'Amico Ryans, right? I am curious to see who we bring out in the other corner, to be on the boundary with Shelby Mooney Ward. And I have no doubt that we're going to roll coverage in some capacity to that side, play quarters, whatever the case, to provide some support. I hope it's Samuel Womack, but we'll see what that looks like. But I mean, I know I said a lot in that regard, but I'm really I got a lot of faith in D'Amico, so I think we're gonna be okay.
What's your score prediction?
All right, my score prediction. So I already told you that I think it's critical because of like I said to you, feels important. You know what I'm saying? When Shanahan is play calling, he needs to realize this is a team that's been coming back on squads all year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We can't just walk off on 4-1 or 4th and 2 if we're within on their side of the 50-yard line or whatever. I personally think we score a touchdown every quarter. So I say 28. And then I will say that the Falcons will score 2 touchdowns and they'll get within field goal range and hit a field goal. So I'm going to say 28-17. And that is going to be the first time. That's a convincing win, relatively.
Right.
I think that it's going to be the first time that the Falcons lose against the spread. But I think that we've got to exact some dominance on this squad. We've got to do it. I mean, if we're the team that we say we are, we got to do it, and it separates us from the rest of the NFC.
Yeah,
NFC
absolutely.
West at the very least.
I mean, the thing with the 49ers that has been frustrating these last few years has been they play down to bad opponents, and this is one game, they can't let that happen. They can't ever let that happen, but especially in this game, because it's this week, they can't let that happen. So
no, I agree with you. I just think that the explosive plays are there. They're there.
Yeah, they'll be there.
They're going to be there. So that's why
they got to take care. They got to take care of business. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and man, you're great at this. So we'll definitely have to do it again. And all you guys watching, appreciate it. Make sure that you guys give this video a thumbs up. Debo the like button. Talanoa Hufunga the like button. Smash it, you know what I mean? And make sure you subscribe if you are not yet. And with that, have a good rest of your Friday night. Peace.